The cold wind touched her skin as Jareen stepped into the open space of the alien market. Her hands shook as she held her small daughter close. The little girl, Elu, hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her stomach made soft cries, but she had no more. Tears left. Jareen had tried everything, begging, stealing, even working for food, but no one helped a mother from a dying world. Now, she had only one choice left, the auction, not to buy, but to sell. Alien voices shouted around her, speaking in rough tones. Shiny lights glowed over metal cages and old ships. Jareen pulled her cloak tighter, trying to hide her fear. Her daughter pressed against her chest, whispering, "Mama, I'm hungry." Jareen kissed her forehead. "Soon, my little star. Soon," she said, even though she didn't believe it herself. The auction master, a fat alien with one eye, pointed at her. "You," he growled. "You next." Jareen stepped forward, heart pounding. She handed Elu to a quiet helper nearby, who promised to keep the child safe. Jareen turned and climbed the platform, standing in front of a crowd of cold eyes. She felt sick, like her soul was falling apart. "This female offers herself," the auction master shouted. Strong arms, healthy body, willing to serve. No one moved, no one said a word. Jareen looked at the crowd, praying someone would speak. She needed the credits not for herself, but for her daughter's food and shelter. A long silence. Then laughter. "Too skinny," one alien said. "Not worth feeding," another growled. Jareen felt the sting of shame rise up in her chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe no one would take her. "And then I'll take her." The voice was low, calm, and strange. Everyone turned. Confused, a human, tall and quiet, stepped forward. His clothes dusty from travel. Jareen stared, eyes wide. "A human, here." The auction master laughed. You want her?" The man nodded. "How much?" 5 credits, the auction master snorted. "She's not worth more." The man tossed the coins without another word. Jareen felt her knees weaken as he walked toward her. She waited for the chain, the collar, the order, but none came. The man looked at her and said, "You can come now." She followed him, trembling. Too afraid to speak, he took her to the side and handed Elu back to her. The child clung to her, and Jareen waited, heart racing. "What will you do with us?" she asked in a soft voice. The man looked down at the child, then at Jareen. "Nothing bad," he said. "Just come with me." They walked through the market in silence. No one stopped them. No one cared. But Jareen couldn't stop thinking, who was this man? They reached a small ship parked at the edge of the desert. He opened the door and let them in. Inside, it was warm, clean, and quiet. There were blankets, a soft couch, and even food on the table. Jareen held Elu close, unsure what to do. The man handed her a plate of warm soup. She looked at it, then at him. "What do you want from me?" she asked again, voice shaking. He sat down in a chair across the room. "Nothing," he said. "Eat, rest. Your child needs you strong." Jareen didn't move? Was this a trick? Was he waiting until she was weak? Or until her guard dropped? But her daughter looked up at her with big eyes. "Mama, can I eat?" Jareen nodded and gave her the spoon. Elu smiled for the first time in days. The man stood up. "There's a bed through that door," he said. "You both can sleep there tonight?" Jareen still didn't understand. Who was this human? Why was he being kind? When he left the room, she whispered to herself, "Why didn't he chain me?" She didn't know yet, but this human, Mason, was not like the others. He had not bought a slave. He had saved a life. And maybe, just maybe, her nightmare was starting to end. Jareen woke with a start. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked around, ready to fight, ready to run. But there were no bars, no dark prison walls, only soft blankets, warm air, and the quiet hum of a ship engine. Elu slept beside her. Curled under the blanket like a tiny sunbeam, Jareen brushed hair from her daughter's face, her heart still. Racing? This had to be a dream. It couldn't be real, then. The smell reached her, warm, rich, comforting real food, not ration powder or scraps. Her body ached from hunger. but fear held her in place. What did he want from her? The door opened slowly. She tensed, bracing herself. But it was only Hime-san, the human. He held a tray with 2 steaming bowls. I didn't mean to scare you, he said gently. You've been asleep almost 10 hours. Jareen looked at him, her voice low, unsure. What is this? Breakfast, he said. You need it, and so does she. He set the tray down on a small table and backed away. Jareen narrowed her eyes. No cuffs? No commands? Mason shook his head. You're not a prisoner, she didn't believe. Him, not yet. Still, she took one step, then another. The soup smelled like vegetables and something sweet. Ilu stirred beside her and yawned. Mama? Come, little one, Jareen said softly, helping her up. They sat at the table. Both unsure, Ilu reached first, taking a spoonful, then another, her smile growing. Jareen hesitated, then tasted it. Her eyes widened. Real food, warm and gentle on her tongue. Why are you doing this? She asked him without looking. Mason leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. I couldn't just leave you there, but you paid for me, she said, voice sharp. I'm yours now. No, he said simply. You were never mine, Jareen. Didn't know what to say. She had been ready for pain, ready to give up her dignity, but not this, not kindness, not peace, after they ate. Mason showed her around the small ship. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a med bay, and a tiny storage room filled with old tools. Is all yours too, he said. Use what you need. Jareen touched the walls, still expecting them to shift. To close in later, she helped Ilu. Wash up and dress. The girl giggled when Mason gave her a soft toy shaped like a bear. I had a niece once, he explained. She loved that thing. Jareen watched him. Still silent every time he smiled, her chest felt tight, he asked. For nothing gave everything. What kind of man was this? At night, Jareen tucked Ilu in and sat by the bed. Her fingers brushed the edge of the blanket. Mason sat across the room, fixing something with his tools. The silence stretched, but it was not heavy, it was calm. Where are you from? He asked suddenly. He looked up, surprised she spoke. Earth, he said. A small town, lots of snow. Jareen tilted her head. Why did you come to a place like that, Auction? I was looking for old ship parts, he answered. I wasn't planning to buy anyone. She studied him carefully. He wasn't rich, not strong-looking, not important, but there was something in his eyes of sadness. Maybe, or a deep patience, he didn't pity her. He just saw her that night. After Mason went to sleep, Jareen sat awake. She looked at her daughter, safe and warm for the first time in months. Then she looked at the closed door where Mason slept. And for the first time, her fear began to loosen. She still didn't trust him. Not yet, but maybe, just maybe, this human was different. She whispered a prayer in her old tongue, a prayer not for escape, not for revenge, but for a second chance. Maybe this wasn't a cage. Maybe this was a beginning. The wind howled outside the ship as the sun dipped behind the cliffs. Jareen stood at the small window, watching shadows grow longer. Her heart beat fast. Not with fear, but with a decision. She had waited, watched, and now she was sure. It was time to run. Mason had been kind, too kind. No demands, no chains, no orders. But that only made her more afraid. What did he really want? Kindness without cost didn't exist, not in her world. Ilu was asleep. Her small hand wrapped around the stuffed bear. Jareen kissed her forehead and whispered, "We have to go." She wrapped her daughter in a blanket and carried her outside. Cold air hit her face like knives, but she didn't stop. The desert stretched before her empty. Silent but open, she didn't know where she was going. But anywhere was better than waiting for kindness to turn into control. She moved fast, her feet sinking into soft sand. Ilu's weight slowed her down, but she kept moving, one step at a time. Behind her, the ship grew smaller, its lights faded. She didn't look back. But after 20 minutes, Ilu whimpered, "Mama, my tummy hurts." Jareen stopped. Holding her tighter, "I know, baby, just a little farther." Then Ilu went limp. Jareen panicked, kneeling fast. checking her daughter's breath. She was still alive but weak, burning up. No, no, please. Jareen cried, holding her close. Not now, not here. She looked up at the endless dark sky. No help, no shelter, no food. She had made a mistake. She was alone again. And her daughter was suffering. A sound came from behind her. Footsteps, slow and steady. Jareen turned sharply, her heart racing, ready to fight. A beam of light hit her eyes and she froze. Mason stood a few feet away, holding a flashlight and a thick coat. He didn't yell, didn't ask questions. He just looked at her with calm eyes. You forgot this, he said, holding out the coat. Worried? I thought I could make it, she whispered, ashamed. Mason stepped closer. Slowly. She's sick, he said, looking at Oo's pale face. Jareen nodded, tears falling. I didn't want to stay and find out you were like the others. I understand, he said, kneeling beside her, but I'm not. He gently lifted Elu into his arms. Jareen didn't stop him, back at the ship. The medbay lights blinked on. Mason moved quickly, placing Elu on the bed, scanning. Her with soft beeps and blinking screens. Jareen stood beside him, shaking. Is she going to die? No, he said after a moment. She's dehydrated, weak, but she'll recover. He injected her with nutrients and wrapped her in warm pads. Jareen sat on the floor, head in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was just so scared. Mason sat across from her, not judging. I get it, he said. You've only ever met people who took things from you. Jareen nodded slowly. I've never had a reason to trust anyone. He looked at her and said, Then, let me give you one. Silence filled the room. Only you lose. Soft breathing broke it. Jareen finally raised her eyes. Why do you care? She asked, her voice quiet. I don't know, Mason replied. Maybe because I lost someone once too. That night Jareen didn't sleep. She sat beside her daughter, holding her hand. But her thoughts kept drifting to Mason. His voice, his eyes, the way he didn't shout or demand. He had followed her into the cold. He had carried her daughter without question. He'd brought them both back. He didn't chain her, he saved her, and in that quiet moment, something. Inside, her heart shifted. It was not love, not yet. But it was the first crack in her wall, the first piece of hope. And hope, she remembered, was dangerous, but maybe it was also worth it. Jareen hadn't stepped into a human town before. Now, as she held Elu's hand and followed Mason down the dusty road, her chest felt tight. Stone buildings rose on either side, quiet and gray. Alien tech mixed with human sign shops, clinics, cargo depots. Children played with drones, vendors. Shouted prices engines rumbled in the distance. But the moment people saw her, everything stopped. All eyes turned. And then came the whispers. Mason noticed it too. He kept walking calmly. But Jareen saw how his jaw tightened. She tried to hide behind him, pulling her hood low. Elu stayed close, silent but curious. That thing's with him, a woman muttered. Some alien trash. A man said louder, disgusting. Another spat near her feet. Jareen flinched, but didn't stop walking. Her heart thudded like a drum. She had faced hunger, war, pain, but this cold disgust from strangers was something else. They didn't know her, but already hated her. Why are they staring? Lou whispered. Jareen forced a smile. They've never seen someone like us. She wanted to turn around, to run. Back to the ship, but Mason kept walking and she didn't want to look weak. They stopped at a small clinic inside. An old human doctor blinked at them, then his eyes landed on Jareen and narrowed. We don't treat aliens, he said flatly. Mason stepped forward, voice firm. She's with me, and it's for the child. She's not human, the doctor snapped. I'm paying, Mason replied, placing credits on the counter. There was a long pause, then the doctor sighed. Fine, just keep it quiet. The checkup didn't take long. Elu's fever was gone, but she needed food and rest. She's lucky, the doctor said, whatever planet you dragged her from. She made it out in time. Jareen bit her lip to stay silent. She didn't want to cry here, not in front of him. Back outside, more people watched. A boy threw a pebble at her feet. She doesn't belong here, he shouted. Jareen froze, her hand tightening around Elu's. But before she could speak, Mason stepped between them. "She does now," he said loud and clear. "She's under my care, and I won't let anyone treat her like dirt." The crowd went quiet. Some stared in shock. Some turned away. One man stepped forward, frowning. "You're protecting it?" "I'm protecting someone who needed help," Mason said. "If that bothers you too bad." Jareen looked at him, stunned. No one had ever defended her like that. Not her own people, not strangers, no one. Her heart beat faster, but this time, not from fear. They walked back to the ship in silence. The sun was lower now, shadows long and soft. When they reached the door, Mason turned to her. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. Jareen shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "I needed to." Inside, she helped Elu settle in. The girl was tired but smiling again. Jareen stood at the window for a while, watching the stars slowly appear. Then she said softly, "Why do you fight for me?" Mason leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Because you didn't deserve what happened to you." Jareen turned to him, her voice quiet. "Do you know what I was worth at the auction?" 5 credits, he said. "But that's not what you're worth to me." She couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes burned. She had sold herself to feed her child. She had expected pain, chains, cruelty. But what she found was something she didn't yet understand. She looked at Mason and said, "Thank you." Not because he saved her, but because, for the first time in a long time, someone saw her as a person, not property, and that to her was worth more than freedom. It was the beginning of healing. Jareen stood in the quiet corner of the ship, staring at the pouch Mason had handed her. It felt heavy in her hand credits. Enough to feed her daughter for weeks. She turned the pouch over, confused. "What is this?" she asked, her voice unsure. "It's yours," Mason said, without looking up. Still adjusting something on the control panel, Jareen frowned. "But I haven't done anything for you." Mason looked at her then, calm and serious. "You're not here to do something for me," he said. "You're here because you needed help." Jareen clutched the pouch, heart racing. Was this a test? A trick? Back home no one gave without expecting something in return, and yet here he was, a offering. More than she asked for. She stepped closer, unsure. "I thought I belonged to you," she said quietly. Mason stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "You don't belong to anyone," he said. "Not anymore." The words hit her like a soft punch. She had been passed from one hand to another for years. Labeled, priced, owned. But now someone was telling her no, reminding her she was more than that. She looked down at the credits in her hand, then back at Mason. "I want to stay," she said suddenly, surprising even herself. "But not because I have to," she added. Mason gave her a small nod. "That's your choice," from that day. Jareen began helping around the ship. She cleaned the tools, prepared food, and even learned some controls. It felt strange at first doing things without fear, without punishment, but over time, it became natural. Elu's health returned quickly. Her cheeks grew round again. And she followed Mason everywhere. One afternoon she called out, "Papa, look at this bug." Jareen froze, eyes wide. Mason paused too, then laughed softly. "Let me see it," he said, kneeling down. He didn't correct her, didn't push the word away, and Jareen didn't either. That night, Jareen sat near the fire pit outside the ship. Stars blinked above her like quiet watchers. Mason brought her a mug of warm tea. Sitting beside her, "Thank you," she said, "not just for the drink, but for everything." He nodded, not needing long speeches. They sat in silence, the good kind. Jareen spoke first, her voice low. "I forgot what peace feels like, Mason." Looked into the fire. "I forgot what family feels like," he said. "Maybe we're both remembering." The next morning, he showed her something new. A small box of seeds wrapped in old cloth. "I used to grow these on Earth," he said. "Want to help me try again?" Jareen smiled, surprised at how easy it came now. "Yes," she said. "Let's grow something new." Later that day, Mason handed her a simple necklace, a little charm shaped like a flame. "This was my sister's," he said, she said. It reminded her of strong spirits. Jareen held it gently, her fingers trembling. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," Mason replied. Just know you're not alone anymore. Jareen looked at him, really looked. She saw pain in his eyes, pain buried deep, but also light, hope, and something else she hadn't seen in years. Safety, she placed the charm around her neck. For the first time, it didn't feel like she was wearing a collar. It felt like she was wearing a promise that said, you are not property, you are not a price, you are a person, and here you are home. Asterisk, the sky above the desert was clear and quiet. The wind blew gently over the sand, carrying peace across the dunes. Jareen stood by the garden patch, watering the small plants they had just started. Elu ran nearby with her stuffed bear. Laughing, for the first time in years, life felt normal. Safe, bright, but peace never lasts long when the past is chasing you. A low rumble echoed in the sky. Jareen looked up, eyes narrowing. A ship, long and sharp, was coming in fast from the east. Too fast, too direct. It wasn't a trader. It wasn't friendly, Mason, she called out, fear creeping into her voice. He stepped out of the workshop, wiping grease from his hands. He looked at the sky and froze. That's not a supply ship, he said. The ship landed hard, kicking up clouds of dust. Its ramp opened with a hiss. And 3 armored figures stepped out in front of them. Him, tall, thick-skinned, cruel-eyed. Her old owner, Lord Brezek Jareen, couldn't breathe. She felt like her legs had turned to stone. He was supposed to be far away, maybe even dead. How did he find her? Why now? Brezek's eyes locked on her. There you are, he said with a smirk. I've come to take back what's mine. Mason stepped in front of Jareen without a second thought. She's not yours, he said coldly. Brezek laughed, sharp. And Dry Eye bought her years ago? She fled. That's theft. Jareen's voice shook. You left us to starve, to die. You are my property, Brezek snapped. I can do what I want with my property. Mason didn't move. She's under my protection now, he said, voice calm but firm. Brezek narrowed his eyes. You think your Earth laws mean anything to me? No, Mason said, but maybe this will. He pulled out a small device and tapped it. A recording played. The auction, the sale, Brezek's voice naming her worthless. The transfer of ownership, then Mason's voice saying clearly, she's free now. Jareen stared at him, eyes wide. He had recorded it. Saved it? Planned for this? The guards behind Brezek shifted uncomfortably. This is your last warning, Mason said, stepping closer. Leave. Or I'll make sure every authority from Earth to the inner colonies hears about your crimes. Brezek's smile faded. You'll regret this, he growled. Turning back toward his ship, he pointed at Jareen one last time. This isn't over, he hissed. Then he was gone. The ship lifted into the air and vanished into the sky. Jareen dropped to her knees, shaking. Mason knelt beside her. Placing a hand gently on her shoulder, I told you, he said softly. You're not alone anymore. Lou ran up, scared but unharmed. Jareen hugged her tight, holding on as if the wind might take her child away. Why did you stand up to him? She asked Mason, her voice breaking. Because you're worth protecting, he said. And I won't let anyone treat you like less again. Jareen looked into his eyes. There was no fear in them, no doubt, only truth, only warmth that night. The stars above them burned a little brighter, the garden still grew, the wind still moved. But something inside Jareen changed. She had faced her past and survived. And beside her stood a man who didn't see her as property or a problem or a burden. He saw her as a person, and that made all the difference. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft colors of orange and gold. Jareen sat quietly on a wooden bench outside the ship. Her hands rested in her lap. The flame-shaped charm around her neck warmed from the sunlight. Behind her, she heard Elu laughing as she watered the garden. Peace had returned. No more running, no more hiding. But something inside Jareen was still unsettled. Not afraid, not sad, just unsure. She had spent her whole life being passed from hand to hand, owned, sold, ignored. Even after freedom, a question remained in her heart. What now? Who am I, if I don't belong to anyone? The ship door opened and Mason stepped out. He held something in his hand, a small box, plain and brown. He walked over and sat beside her without a word. For a moment, they just watched the sky. "You've been quiet today?" he said. Jareen smiled faintly. "I've been thinking about?" She looked at him, her voice soft. "About what comes next." Mason nodded, then handed her the box. She opened it slowly. Inside was a ring knot, shiny or royal, just simple and strong, made of a dark metal that shimmered faintly under the light. "I had it made from the scrap metal of my old ship," he said. "Thought it was useless. Until now." Jareen stared at it, her fingers trembling. "I don't understand." Mason took a deep breath. "You were sold to me for 5 credits, he said, "but I never wanted to own you. You gave me hope," he continued. "You gave this place life again. I don't want you to stay because you feel safe or because you owe me. I want you to stay because you choose to." Jareen's eyes filled with tears. He wasn't claiming her. He wasn't saving her. He was asking her. "Mason," she whispered, "I never thought anyone would see me like this." "Then I'll be the first," he said with a smile. "But I hope not the last." Jareen reached into the box and lifted the ring. Her hands still shook. Not from fear, but from something new, something bright, something that felt like love. "I want to stay," she said, "not because I need to, but because I want to." Mason smiled, and for the first time, she saw him truly at peace. He took her hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. It wasn't a grand ceremony. No music, no crowds. Just the quiet sound of Alu's laughter nearby, and the warmth of 2 broken souls choosing each other later that evening. Jareen cooked dinner while Mason fixed the garden lights. Elu danced around the fire with a big grin. Everything felt new. Not because of where they were, but because of who they were now. A team, a family, not born by blood or built by force, but chosen. And when the stars came out, Jareen stepped outside, looked up, and whispered, "I was sold for 5 credits, but I was loved without price."